Chapter 10. Broncos. Bogus Basin Road. Throttle rode in the passenger seat of the CRX, Manuel driving. Manuel was going at a steady pace, just at the speed limit. They were on their way to the top of the downhill course that he raced on. People stood at the corners where there were guardrails to protect them, along with the sides of the road where they wouldn't get hit. Some had brought small stereos and were listening to music as they drove by. Some songs sounded like indie rock, others sounded like the super Eurobeat genre. Takumi was behind them in the 8.6. No doubt he is going to raise a few eyebrows, Manuel thought to himself. This was going to be something big, especially if Takumi wanted a crack at the course. Throttle was lost in his own thoughts as they drove. Throttle had tried to use his communicator after he had rode his bike back to Manuel's apartment from the crash site last night, only to find it busted. The only thing that still worked on the communicator was the homing beacon. He'd have to track his bros down using that beacon when his leg healed up. Other than that, seeing the people on the sides of the road as they drove up the pass reminded him of when he went to events like this on Mars, before the Plutarchian invasion. It was bringing back a lot of good memories. They finally arrived at the top of the course to find Bob Sampson and the Bogus Broncos waiting for them, along with two other teams, the Purple Scorpions and the 5th Street Drifters. Scorpions and 5th Street. Didn't expect to see them up here tonight, Manuel said as they arrived at the top of the course. Manuel then parked the car in the parking lot. Throttle double-checked the hood over his head to make sure his ears were hit flat against his head. Then he and Manuel stepped out of the car.
Well, look who's here!
A man with red hair and freckles exclaimed.
Didn't think you were coming, man.
Yeah, nice to see you too, Bob, Manuel said with a smile. Bob then looked over and saw Takumi parking his car.
Who's that?
He asked, pointing to Takumi. That's my pen pal, Takumi Fujiwara, Manuel said proudly. I told you about him at the coffee shop, remember? Bob looked at Takumi, surprised.
Whoa! No way! That's Tofu Boy? The kid who beat the Red Suns? The one and only.
Ikitani said, walking up with Takumi and Itsuki.
I see you spread word about my arrival, Takumi said. Looks like I might have some challenges tonight.
Well, I didn't think it would be such a big deal. I didn't think the reception would be this big, Manuel said, scratching his head. And besides, I don't see why it would matter.
Are you kidding? This guy's a legend in the making. He's all over the Gunpowder Planet on the internet.
A 5th Street racer shouted. Takumi put on an innocent poker face as Manuel gave him a stare. Why didn't you tell me you were such a racing icon? Manuel asked, an eyebrow raised.
I didn't think it would matter,
Takumi replied nervously. Oh well, I'm just giving you a hard time anyway. Why don't you see if anyone wants to challenge or learn from you, Mr. Drift Prodigy? I'll be right here if you want some tips on the course. Manuel then noticed Throttle looking out of the skyline. A full moon was overhead, and Throttle didn't look amused. He looked like he was down, like he was reliving a painful memory.
Don't worry, we got this,
Ikitani said, also noticing.
I'm sure we can keep these guys amused, at least until the Takahashi brothers show up.
Manuel nodded and walked over to where Throttle was, as he leaned on the CRX. Something wrong? Manuel asked.
This just brings back a lot of good memories,
Throttle said.
The part, you know.
Manuel put a hand on Throttle's shoulder. It's never easy, is it?
No.
Throttle replied as they heard engines start up.
Never is.